So we're going to talk today about getting our blog to rank on the first page of the search engine. My name is Bob Stewart. If you ever wanted to chat with me, you can do that by going to Twitter using the @ symbol, @ActiveBob, or you can find me on Facebook at that same place, facebook.com/ActiveBob. When we're talking about search engines and getting our blog to rank on the first page of the search engines, a lot of times what we're really talking about is Google. And the reason I'm going to use Google as kind of a synonym for search engines for the rest of this hour. And the reason I do that is because Google sends about 65% of the traffic to the greater internet. And that's the case on ActiveRain. Now, the same kind of concepts that we're going to talk about today will apply for Bing and for Yahoo, and they have some slight variations to their algorithm. Okay, but if we do these kind of fundamental things, we're going to be able to rank in Google, and subsequently we're going to be able to rank in some of the other search engines. I always kind of, I guess, preface this class with this disclaimer. I do not consider myself to be a search engine expert, and the reason for that is because Google is always kind of changing and tweaking what they say is the most effective way to get your content onto the first page. Unfortunately, they never send me an email and say, "Hey Bob, guess what? We just made a change." Right? These are all things. The things we're going to talk about today have been based on our experience, and really any kind of a search engine expert is just kind of giving you their experience. And so this is going to be based on our experience over about the last 9 years now, 8 or 9 years, in getting real estate websites to rank well. And we had our own brokerage site before we started ActiveRain, and a lot of what we're going to talk about today here is based on the experience of thousands of ActiveRain members who've done this stuff and who have content already ranking on the first page and getting a lot of qualified visitors to it. So with that disclaimer out of the way, here's what we're after. Okay, and so here on my screen you can see these are 10 blog posts, and we're going to look at posts of this nature today. But these are 10 blog posts about very specific components of somebody's marketplace. And this happens to be a guy out of Northville or Livonia, Michigan. His name is Russ Ravery. And these are some older posts. There's some newer posts in here. What we can see is that over time, a cumulative effort of writing posts of this nature, and I'm going to talk about what kinds of posts is he writing here, and we'll really dive into kind of the keywords of posts and what we should be writing about next week. We'll touch on it a little bit this week, but what we can see is that we can write content that can generate a ton of traffic to our blog. And then the third class in this series is going to be about how do we take that traffic now and convert it into leads. But he's writing blog posts, he's doing it over a period of time, he's covering a large segment of his market, he's talking about things that are very specific, and he's generating a ton of traffic. And all of you guys have a chance to do something very similar to what Russ is doing here. So that's what we want. Let's figure out how we get there. In order to get there, I think the very first thing we need to understand is kind of just a high-level look at search engine optimization. And if there's any experts out there, if there are real experts with search engine optimization, you're going to find the guy that created this pyramid, Rand Fishkin, who's the founder of SEO Moz, which is a community, just like ActiveRain is a community of real estate professionals. SEO Moz is a community of search engine experts, and if you were looking at me, you'd see me put my fingers up for expert, because there's a lot of people out there that purport to be experts. But again, the reality is it's just based on people's experience. And so what Rand has found is that there's kind of this pyramid for search engine optimization, and at the bottom is always going to be content quality and accessibility. And by content quality, I mean Google is looking for content that is high quality. Okay, but they're also looking for it to make sure it's accessible, which means we're going to do some certain things every time we write a piece of content to make sure that we're sending all the right signals to the search engine so that they want to return our piece of content on the first page. Keyword research and targeting, again, we'll talk a little bit today about some of the things I'm going to encourage you to be writing about, especially as you kind of get started, and some of the most effective ways that you can reach consumers with your blog. Next week's class will be entirely about this second kind of component of SEO. And then you've got link building and social. And in the third class, we will talk about link building. Okay, social is kind of something that's a little bit new in the last year or two, where the search engines have started to take into account some of the social signals, right? Is your content being shared on Twitter? Is it being retweeted? Is it out there on Google+? And so there's these social signals that are starting to have an impact on the way that search engines display results. And I think the further we get down the road and the more the years pass, social will become a bigger part. But right now it's still really about quality content and then accessibility. Are we doing the right things in our content to make sure that it's able to be found? So there's a concept that I want everybody to understand, and it's called the long tail. And the slide I have here is the long tail for how somebody would search for shoes online. I think the easiest way to understand the long tail is to think about it in terms of how Amazon sells books. So when Amazon set out, really in the beginning of Amazon, they were mainly a bookseller. And the reason for that is Amazon looked at the landscape of how books sold, and they realized that in any given year, the top 10 books make up 30% of the sales. Okay? The top 10 books make up 30% of the sales. And those are books, the Harry Potter book, that it'll sell 5 million copies or however many copies it sells. Those top 10 books make up 30% of the sales. All the rest of the books, okay, all the rest of the 99.99999% of the books that are out there make up the other 70% of the sales. But here's the thing with most of those books. A lot of them only get sold 4 or 5 times. So if you were going to buy a rather obscure book, you would not be able to walk into your local Border bookstore or your local Barnes & Noble and find that book. And Amazon said to themselves, look, if we can be the people or the place that people go to find all the rest of those books, the ones that you can't find when you go into your local Barnes & Noble or Border Book, we can have a successful business, because we realize that all of these ones that aren't top sellers, cumulatively, they still make up a huge percentage of the sales. So when we look at search, and again, the slide you see here is for shoes, but in real estate, something similar happens. And what we're seeing for shoes is that if you were going to try to rank for a phrase like shoes, there would be a high amount of cost and competition associated with ranking for it. The cost would be like if you were doing pay-per-click. But there would also be a lower probability of conversion, right? Somebody looking for shoes is not as close to converting or buying as somebody looking for, in this case, red Nike men's running shoes, right? Now, the volume of search and the competition is going to be less for red Nike men's running shoes, but we're going to have a higher probability of conversion as people get more specific with what they search. So in real estate, think about this in terms of the short head would be phrases like Seattle real estate, homes for sale in Seattle, Seattle condos, right? As we get out on the long tail, we literally start to see, an infinite number of ways that people search for things. Now what happens is out on that long tail, so instead of somebody searching for Seattle condos, they search for the Bravern condos in Belltown, Seattle, right? This very specific search where they're looking for, information about a particular building in Seattle. What happens is that phrase doesn't get searched for nearly as often as Seattle condos. But somebody searching for that phrase, first off, we're going to be able to compete to rank for that phrase. Okay, it's not going to get searched for as often, but the person that searches for it is going to be a heck of a lot closer to doing something. The person that searches for the Bravern condos in Belltown, Seattle, they're going to be a heck of a lot closer to doing something, to acting, to buying, than somebody that just searches for Seattle condos. So keep that in mind, and as we kind of start to dive into the things we should be writing about, I want you guys to think about this long tail and just kind of understand what it means. So let's talk about these first 4 components to make sure that our content gets found on page 1 of Google. Okay, we're going to go through 2, 3, and 4 individually, but I just want to kind of lay them out here for you. So we're going to write content that's 200 to 500 words. We're going to pick a keyword phrase for our title, and we'll talk about what that means. We're going to repeat that title or that keyword phrase that we picked at the start and the end of our content, and then we're going to use it, that keyword phrase that we picked for our title, 3 to 5 times throughout the body of our post. So before we dive into picking a keyword phrase, let's talk about 200 to 500 words, because here's the reality. We've found, and again, all this stuff is kind of based on what we've seen in our experiences here on Active Rain, or before, we found that you can get a piece of content to rank at about 100 words. You get much less than that, and it's generally not going to get picked up. But at 100 words, you can get a piece of content to rank. But here's the thing. Anytime we're talking about search engine optimization, we always have to have this balance between, will the search engines find it and index it and put it on the first page? We have to have, on one side, that. On the other side, we have, when a real person does the search and finds my piece of content, is the content I delivered to them going to convince them that I'm an expert or somebody worthy of them reaching out to help in their real estate, with their real estate needs. So I would almost challenge anybody to be able to write something that's less than 200 words that convinces me that you're an expert in the subject you just wrote about. So somewhere between 200 and 500 words. If you go over 500 words and you get a really lengthy piece because you just absolutely love the condo building where you've got a listing and you just want to tell them every awesome thing there is to know about living there and really give them a good experience, that's okay. Some of the more recent search engine updates, Panda and Penguin, are starting to put more precedence on better quality content, right? And so length can have something to do with that, assuming that the content that's in there all kind of ties together and it all relates to each other. So 200 to 500 words is kind of a guideline. Okay, you can get stuff to rank if it's less than that. However, you're probably not going to actually educate the consumer to the degree they wish to be educated, which could end up hurting you in the long run. We'll talk about that. Once you start to get up to 500 words, right, you're kind of getting in that sweet spot. You can get a little bit longer than that, but a lot of the stuff we're writing about doesn't have to be like 5,000-word dissertations, okay? Let's talk about picking a keyword phrase for the title of our post. So every single blog post that we write, we are going to pick one keyword phrase, and that is going to be the phrase for which we wish that post to rank for. Okay, now we may consider different variations on a similar keyword phrase for subsequent posts in the future. So if today I wrote about lakefront properties on Lake Whatcom, right? A couple months from now, I may write about Lake Whatcom lakefront homes, right? It's a real similar phrase, but it's a little bit different because as we do searches on the internet and on Google, we will get slightly different results for the different variations or the ways that we use the keyword phrase. Okay, now when we're picking a keyword phrase for our title, we're almost always going to use geography, and I realize kind of the folly of having almost and then always right next to each other, especially when I use always in caps. But here's the thing. As there's two kind of sides to how a consumer will search, especially as it relates to real estate. You've always got this subject matter side, and then you've always got geography. What will happen sometimes is they'll start with just the subject matter, so they'll do homes for sale, and they'll realize, oh wait, it's not getting me the homes I want, and so they'll add in a geography, homes for sale in Seattle. And as they get closer and closer to buying something, their geographical searches get much more specific, but we always want to have those components of geography and subject matter. Okay? Let me give you a little bit of an example here, or kind of a piece of advice, I guess. The more precise your geography is, the less precise your subject matter needs to be. Conversely, the more precise your subject matter, the less precise your geography. So let's talk about more specific subject matter. Okay? So in real estate search, our subject matter is generally going to be homes for sale. So a real generic search would be homes for sale in Seattle, right? Where both the geography and the subject matter are pretty generic. But remember, if we want to hit that long tail, we want to find people that are closer to actually acting, and we want to be able to compete with the big box sites like Trulia and Zillow and Realtor.com, right? We have to think in terms of either getting more specific with our subject matter or more specific with our geography. So some ways we can get more specific with our subject matter, and we will really dive into this next week where the whole time we'll be talking about keyword phrases and how to pick out what we want to rank for. Okay? But how about homes for sale in Seattle under $300,000, right? Homes for sale in Seattle with the mother-in-law suite, with some kind of feature, and people search all the time for property with certain types of features. homes for sale in Redmond near Microsoft. So you can see in each of these scenarios, my subject matter gets more specific, right? Homes for sale under 300,000. Homes for sale with a mother-in-law suite. Homes for sale near Microsoft. Okay? Our geography, Seattle or Redmond, is pretty general at this point. So if we wanted to have a general subject matter, like homes for sale, we need to get more specific with our geography. So in this case, the Bravern condos for sale in Seattle, right? My specific geography is the name of the building, Bravern, right? Homes for sale in Hunters Ridge, Saline, where my geography, my specific geography is the name of the subdivision, Hunters Ridge in Saline, right? Homes for sale in Seattle, 98109, where somebody's looking at a specific zip code. Okay, so once we're able to pick out a keyword phrase for the title of our post, and again, we're going to do a whole hour on keyword phrases, but once we have that keyword phrase, it's going to be what we use in the title of our blog post. Then we want to repeat the title at the start and the end of our post, and we want to use it exactly as it was in the title. Okay, so Bravern condos for sale in Seattle. If that was the title, we would want to make sure that in the first 160 characters, you know, the first 15 or 20 words, we want to make sure we get that keyword phrase into the body of our post. So we're going to repeat our title at the start of our post. And if you see a Google result, I mean, you guys have all seen a Google result, okay? The portion in blue that we can click on, that comes from the page title of a blog post, of a page on the internet. The page title will be based on whatever you use as a title of your blog. The portion in green then is the URL, and on ActiveRain, whatever you use for the title of your blog post becomes a part of that URL. ActiveRain.com/blogsview/Bravern condos for sale in Seattle. Okay? The black component then becomes the page description, and the page description on an ActiveRain post is pulled out of that first 160 characters, that first 15 or 20 words. It's why we need to get that exact match keyword phrase into the beginning or that first sentence of our blog post. Okay? The reason I have you put it at the end is because I had a really good English teacher in 8th grade, and prior to 8th grade I was a horrible English student. But when we learned how to write 5-paragraph essays, and it might have been 7th grade, when we learned how to write 5-paragraph essays, my teacher said, when you write a 5-paragraph essay, in the first paragraph you tell them what you're going to tell them about, then you spend 3 paragraphs telling them about it, and then the last paragraph you tell them what you just told them about. So the reason I have you put the title, that exact title, Bravern condos for sale in Seattle, the reason I have you put it at the end of your post because it's a really easy place to get it in there as we work towards getting our keyword phrase in the body of our post 3 to 5 times. Okay? So if I put it at the start and I put it at the end, I already have it in there 2 times, right? It's in my first sentence, it's in my last sentence, and now I need to get that keyword phrase into the body of my post only 1 to 3 more times. Okay? I should probably have number 3 as number 1, but it needs to be exactly, you need to use it in the body of the post exactly as you used it in the page title for those 3 to 5 instances. So if Bravern condos for sale in Seattle was my title, I would want to make sure that I used it exactly like that, right? If you're interested in Bravern condos for sale in Seattle, right, you're going to find, right, so I need to get it in there exactly as I used it in my page title. I want to make sure when I'm done with the post, when I've cranked out my 400 words talking about the Bravern and all the stuff that's nearby and all the amenities and what they can expect to find in a unit and what the building's like, right? I want to make sure at the end of the day that my phrase, Bravern condos for sale in Seattle, ends up being the most common phrase on the page. And generally, if we use it 5 times, it's going to be the most common phrase on the page. And then you always want to make sure that the body of your blog post, right, the other content that's not your keyword phrase is similar to your keyword phrase. And when you're writing, right, if you're writing about the Bravern condos for sale in Seattle, it's going to be almost impossible to not have the other content relate to the keyword phrase. right? Because what other stuff are you going to expect to find in there? You're going to expect to find words like square footage, words like parking, right? Words like gym or kitchen, or right? I mean, these are the kind of words we would use as we just wrote about the Bravern condos. So that part is going to be pretty simple, especially when we're writing our own piece of content. Now, if 3 to 5 times as good, is 10 to 15 better? No. Okay? There becomes a certain point where the search engine just says, you know what? The content in here is not really geared towards educating somebody. It's geared towards trying to manipulate me. And I'm a search engine, and I'm way smarter than you, and you're not going to manipulate me. Right? I mean, that's kind of what we're trying to do. But when we're creating a good piece of content, we want to make sure that we're not, trying to kind of overstate our objective in hopes of manipulating the search engine. So we're kind of falling into this sweet spot of 3 to 5 times use of that phrase in the body of our post. So let's go in here and look at some live examples of this. So those are kind of the 4 fundamentals, right? These are the first things we're thinking about every time we write a blog post. We're going to talk about some other things that we can do in our content after we look at some live examples here. So let's go live. And what I'm going to do is we're going to look at some searches that people have done, and this is just in the last 30 days, and I pulled this up this morning. Okay, so we're looking at the last 30 days of traffic coming to Active Rain. And we're going to look at it in kind of 2 different scenarios, and these are the first kind of 2 things. Before our keyword class next week, where I'll give you a bunch of ideas about things you could and should be writing about, there's 2 things that I would kind of start with, and they would be condos and subdivisions, right? So if you're a real estate agent on this call, now if you're a lender on this call, you kind of got to get your thinking cap on. You're going to be writing stuff related to like types of loan programs in conjunction with geographies, right? But if you're a real estate agent, chances are you have condos and or subdivisions in your marketplace, okay? So in the last 30 days, 14,000 visitors have come to Active Rain who've used the word condo in their search query. And I want to come down here and look at this particular search right here, the Sunwood condos in Shelton, Connecticut. And we're going to see that 13 people in the last 30 days, of which 61% were new. So what that means is that 7 brand new visitors who came to Active Rain and came to this particular blog post we're going to look at in the last 30 days that used that phrase specifically, okay? So I switched between my Safari browser and my Firefox browser for a pretty good reason. On Firefox, I'm logged into Google. In fact, right now I'm in the back end of Google Analytics. So Google knows a lot about who I am and what I do in my Firefox browser, right? I got all these cookies on my browser. They're tracking what websites I've been on, where I go. Anytime I'm logged in, they're building a profile of who I am as a searcher. And so they start to look at my behavior, and they will manipulate my search engine results based on my past behavior. So when we're doing searches, and when you're looking for yourself and to see how your content is ranking, you always want to make sure you have a clean browser on your computer. And I use Safari as my clean browser. Anytime I'm searching in Safari, I keep it set to private browsing so that the search engine can't throw their cookies on and track and kind of learn my behavior. And then I'll also, before I ever start these things, I'll completely reset my browser, wiping out all of the data, all of the history, all of those things that a search engine could potentially look at in order to manipulate my results. Because if I go to Active Rain every single day, right, there's a higher likelihood they're going to show Active Rain in my results. So on my clean browser, let's take a look at the search phrase Sunwood Condos, Shelton CT, right? We're going to see her post coming up here in the first position, right? Now, this is not just condos in Shelton, right? It's a very specific phrase where somebody was looking for something very specific. If we were to click and open this, it's going to bring us to Barbara's blog post in here. Okay, so we've got a keyword phrase. She's not focusing on 5 buildings in her market. She's not trying to give us condos in Shelton and Huntington and 10 other cities, right? She's Sunwood Condominiums in Shelton CT. Now, I don't know why she has Huntington in there. My guess is maybe it used to be called Shelton, or maybe that's the name of the neighborhood inside of the city of Shelton. I'm not exactly sure on that, but you'll notice it, excuse me, in her first 160 characters here, and she actually just uses it as kind of a statement here. She repeats her keyword phrase. Perfect. Okay? And then we need to get down in here, and we need to see how many other times does she use her exact keyword phrase. Okay? So there it is once. She's got it real close here. Sunwood Condominiums in Shelton CT, so one. She gets kind of close here. Sunwood Condo for sale or rent. Sunwood Condominiums in Shelton. So I'll call that an exact match on her keyword phrase. She might have wanted to add CT there. She kind of missed it. That's okay. All right, so there's a second exact match. Here's Sunwood Condominiums. We would have wanted to have it to say in Shelton CT. So she kind of dances around it. Sunwood Condos in Shelton CT, right? She wants to make sure that she gets that exact match. Now, in her particular case, it's not mattering because she's still showing up at the top of the search engine, right? But you really want to make sure we get that 3 to 5 uses of our keyword phrase. And then what kind of content is on this page? And actually, this will be a surprise for Carrie. We have another class, and it won't be part of our boot camp series. We did a class on kind of the anatomy of a post of this nature. Our blogging blueprints, where we talked about if you want to write about condo complexes and subdivisions, here's how you should do it. And basically, we talk about, look, first couple of paragraphs, flowery introduction, right? So she's got its private wooded area, nestled, and desirable amenities, right? So kind of the flowery introduction, right? Then she talks about, in her case, and this isn't exactly what we teach, but she kind of gives you a little bit about how many units are in here. Then she's got her link in here, which is important, and we'll talk about using our link here in a minute. But she's got a link that utilizes close to her keyword phrase, okay? Because if I wanted to actually find the condos that were for sale right now, we need to give them a quick way to do that. And she has a link here that does that. That's good. Then what does she do? Well, she talks about what you could expect in some of the units, right? 2-bath minimums, private decks, solariums, 1,300 to 2,000 square feet. She talks about kind of some of the amenities. She talks about that it has gas heating and central air conditioning, right? She talks about what's nearby, okay? Now, the first time she wrote a post like this, it might not have been that easier for her to kind of figure out, what do I want to write about in this thing, right? She knew that she was going to use her keyword phrase. She knew that she was targeting something very specific. She didn't really know she was going to use it exactly 3 to 5 times, but that's okay. If she wanted to at this point, she could come back and edit the post. Okay, but what is she going to write about? So she kind of developed this formula. Look, first paragraph, flowery description. Then I'm going to get them a chance to find the homes for sale. Then I'm going to tell them about the units. Then I'm going to tell them about the complex. Then I'm going to tell them about what's nearby. Okay, then I might come down in here and throw in a video. Here's a little map of where this thing is at. Let's look at her statistics. So this is Barbara's statistics, and this post was written in June of 2010. So we are 2 years and 6 months. We're 30 months away from when she wrote this. It has 2,800 clicks on it. This is the column when you're looking at your statistics, and you can always find your statistics by being on your My homepage and then clicking on traffic. Right here on the left, traffic is going to give us our statistics. This is the only one you're concerned about, clicks. Comments don't matter. Consumers rarely comment on blog posts. Views is kind of a deceptive deal, and it just means that your piece of content may have showed up somewhere. Doesn't necessarily mean they were looking at it particularly. Clicks is what's important. And when we look at the Sunwood condos in Shelton, we see 2,800 clicks, which means it's getting an average of, what, 95 clicks a month over the course of its life. She has another post on here that we see up here a little bit higher, Aspetuck Village condominiums, where there's been 4,200 clicks since she wrote it. Look at this. It looks a lot similar to how she'd done it before, right? So she's kind of developed a blueprint, right? Flowery description, a little bit about the phases, chance to find the condos for sale, what's the unit like, what are the amenities, what's nearby, right? Video, map. Let's come here and look at Aspetuck, because in this particular scenario, we had Sunwood Condos, Shelton CT. That was the phrase. That exact phrase was how people search. But when we look at Aspetuck, we see that there's all these different ways that people might search and still find your content. It doesn't have to be that exact match keyword, right? When we start to write on the long tail, when we start to write about specific things in our marketplace, there becomes all these different ways that people can find our content. Right? Aspetuck Village, Shelton CT, condo for sale. Do you want that person reading your blog post? Are they closer to buying something than somebody that just said condo for sale in Shelton? Heck yes, right? Heck yes. Aspetuck Village, Shelton CT for sale. Right? Aspetuck Village condominiums, Aspetuck Village, Shelton. Right? We see these people who are doing these kinds of searches, and we realize, oh my goodness, like they want something very specific, and we can get in front of them. And again, we see her post, we see her using, repeating the keyword phrase. We see her kind of, she's missing it just a little bit, but she'd want to get that keyword phrase in there 3 to 5 times. So the other thing that I'm going to suggest you write about are subdivisions. And in this case, we're going to look at a couple of examples here. One is the Chadbourne subdivision. So we see Chadbourne subdivision, Garner NC. But what will happen a lot with subdivision, they won't actually use the word subdivision, but that's okay. If we're writing about it, like I showed you here with Aspetuck, we're going to pick up all of these kind of random related types of searches anyway. So Chadbourne subdivision, Garner NC, we see 11 people, of which 54% were new, so 6 of those 11 were brand new visitors to Active Brain in the last 30 days. If we do a search for Chadbourne, Garner NC, or we could do Chadbourne subdivision, right, that would actually probably get her result to be, it's still in that 3rd position. Okay? When we click on this post, what we're going to see here is she had a focus. Now, she got a little bit away from her focus in the title, okay? She wanted to add that flowery description, and I see a lot of people doing this. It's all right to have this kind of flowery description, but if you're going to add it in there as a part of your title, which again becomes your keyword phrase, because look up here at the top. See that? That's our page title, which is based on the title of our blog post, and if we look at the result here, right, it's pulling that out. We want to make sure in this first, I think it's 120 characters, that we have our keyword phrase. Because if she had gone with beautiful all-brick homes with 0.5 acres or more in Chadbourne, Garner NC, right, and had her keyword, her real kind of target at the end, she's hurting herself. So you want to make sure if you're going to use a flowery description, it's okay, but make sure you get your keyword phrase at the beginning of that. And then we want to see, are we repeating our keyword phrase? And in her case, she kind of misses it. Okay, she doesn't have that exact match keyword phrase in here. And this could be the difference between her ranking in the 3rd position and her ranking in the 1st position. Okay? But again, we kind of come through here and see she's got some kind of a formula here that she's using. She's giving them a chance to find the lots of the homes for sale. Okay? This particular blog post has had like 16,000 clicks on it. And it's almost, it's older, right? It's 5 years old or something. My math's bad. It's 4 years old. Okay, it's getting 4,000 clicks a year. which means it's getting like 300 clicks a month. So I'm thinking, well, how is that possible? Because we don't see that kind of crazy click traffic recently. When she talked about this, when she wrote about it, it was a new construction. What do builders do when they do new construction? They market it, right? And what kind of marketing do? They do like billboards, radio ads, print, right? My favorite billboard is the one you drive by and says, if you lived in Chadbourne right now, you'd be home. Right? Meanwhile, you have 45 more minutes on the freeway to get back to where you actually live. What does a consumer do when they get home after they drove by that billboard? You think they write down the builder's website? No, they go to Google and they do something like Chadbourne, Garner NC, Chadbourne Subdivision, Garner NC, Chadbourne Homes, Garner NC. Right? Here's her post again. So I think she picked up a ton of traffic for this post based on that. But here's the deal. She's got all kinds of posts like this in her blog, right? Macklemore Estates, the Knolls at Noise, Silver Point in Raleigh, Everwood Custom Homes, Garner NC. And we'll look at the traffic here, 4,800 clicks, right? Stephen Oaks, 3,100 clicks. Macklemore Estates, 3,100 clicks. And if I was just to come over here and search right now for Macklemore Estates in Clayton, and I haven't done this, so I hope this works. But if I was to come here and do the search for Macklemore Estates, what do I expect to find? Oh, there it is. Duh, right? So she's done a really good job of kind of identifying her keyword phrase in the title of her post. She's done, I guess a less than desirable job of kind of repeating it 3 to 5 times exactly as it is in the title. But sometimes when we get really hyper-local like this, we can even kind of mess it up a little bit, and it still works. And it still works to the tune of, just ridiculous amounts of traffic, especially over a long period of time, and especially when we consider that the long tails, like the effectiveness of the long tail is based on its cumulative effect, right? It's not just writing about one thing or a couple of posts and sitting back and going, okay, well, I covered 3 subdivisions, like I'm done. Sit back and wait for the checks to roll in, right? She realizes, and Penny's written, 800 blog posts. Okay, she realizes that it's this cumulative effect. It's looking at all of those subdivisions, all of those complexes in her market, condo complexes, and having content about each of those out there so that cumulatively, right, the 15 clicks a month she gets for this one, the 45 a month for this one, the 60 a month for this one, cumulatively it has a big impact. What do I have over here? Here's just another example. A nature trail, Pensacola, Florida, right? We see Nature Trail, Pensacola, homes for sale. Like 9 new people in the last 30 days searched Nature Trail, Pensacola, homes for sale. Nature Trail is the name of a subdivision, right, in Pensacola. Do I want these 9 people on my site? Like, if you don't want these 9 people on your site, just close your browser down right now and leave. I don't know what to do with you. All right, well, let's look at a couple of kind of commonly missed opportunities for SEO. So we've got our first kind of 4 foundational things, right? We've talked a little bit about what we're going to write about. Now let's talk about kind of some commonly missed things, some extra things we might want to do in our blog post. The first one is photo metadata. Huh? Basically, it's just the image description and the title that you give your photos every time you add a photo to ActiveRain. Image description, so this is what it looked like when you upload a photo, right? You have a chance to give it an image description and a title. The image description is going to be what the search engines identify that as being a picture of. Okay? That does not necessarily need to exactly match your keyword phrase. Right? Just tell me what's a picture of. But if it's a picture of, if my keyword phrase is the Crossing Townhomes for Sale Mesquite, right? It makes sense that my image description would relate to what my keyword phrase was. So having images on the page will help you from 2 perspectives. It will help you reinforce to the search engine that the image I have here is about the same thing as my keyword phrase or the content on the page, right? The image description is what they will use to identify it. If somebody ever did an Google image search for, the Crossing Townhomes, her picture is going to come up. Oh, runny nose. If now the title becomes part of the keyword that are on the page. And what I mean by that, let's see if we can find one in here. Okay, see how it popped up there and it said Aspetuck Village, Shelton CT? The search engine will look at those words, that's from our title line of our image, and they will count those as part of the keywords on this page. So if I was only able to get my exact match keyword phrase onto the page 3 times and I wanted to get it on there 5 times, I could put it in the title line of my image. But if I have 4 images on there and I've used the exact match keyword phrase 4 times in my post and then I used it 4 times in the title of my images, I would have it on there 8 times and that would be too many, right? Now a search engine would see that phrase on the page 8 times, you know, and possibly dock me a little bit because to them it looks like I'm trying to stuff this thing full of my keyword phrase. So 3 to 5 times, but if we can't get it in there all the times like in the words on the page, we can put it in the title line of the image. The image description becomes what they index and what they, you know, say this picture is about, because even though Google's getting closer to being able to just identify every single picture on the web and really tell us what it's about, they can't yet, so they depend on our image description. And then our title becomes part of the keywords that are on the page. An anchor text link using your keyword phrase. What does that mean? Well, it means that if our keyword phrase was loft condos in Belltown, Seattle, somewhere in the body of our post, we want to have a link that uses our keyword phrase. Right? The anchor text is just the words that make up the link, so an anchor text link using our keyword phrase. You'll notice in Barbara's post, and I don't mean to pick on Barbara, she started doing these right when she started on Active Rain, and she's so close to just doing them right, but it doesn't matter that she's close because she's still ranking on the first page and in a lot of cases in the first position because she realizes writing about these hyper-local, real specific parts of her market is important. But here's her link, right? Aspetuck Village condos for sale. Now she's got or rent in Shelton CT, so she gets Aspetuck Village condos in Shelton CT in there. I would have it be an exact match. So maybe click here if you want to find condos for sale, or if you want to find, you know, sales or rental Aspetuck Village condos in Shelton CT, right? Somehow we got to figure out how do we get this exact keyword phrase into a link. In our third class, we'll really hammer on the link. Like, where do I link to? Where in the page should it be, right? In this case, she's got it. It should be above the fold, which means they never had to scroll down to get it. Now, she's really close here, but we'll really drill down on that in our third class. Okay, but you want to have that exact match keyword phrase in there as a link. Okay, so think about this. If you had it in at the start, you had it in as a link, and you had it in at the end, you've got it in there 3 times already. Okay, now we just need to figure out 2 other places to get it in there. And that could be behind in the title line of 2 images. What this is doing is this is telling the search engine, look, not only is the piece of content I have here for you a good piece of content to serve up for this keyword phrase, I'm also willing to send you off to another page on the internet that has good content for this keyword phrase. Okay, so we're just kind of sending all these signals that we can to the search engines to get them to believe that our piece of content is the most worthy of being returned in the search. And then this last one is additional media rich content and layout. And let's start with layout because this doesn't have as much to do with a kind of a search engine indexing our content and originally ranking it as it has to do with allowing it to rank over a long period of time, because what will happen is as people do a query, as they click on the result and land on our page, the longer they stay there, the better signal that is to the search engine that they returned the proper result to the person. So we really want to make sure that our content has a very professional layout or look and feel. And hopefully Carrie was able to have sent you guys the link that we did about that blueprints class, because in there I really talk about the layout of a post. How do you make these things professional looking? And the class that Carrie does every other Tuesday, just writing your blog, in there she really talks about layout. How do we get a nice clean layout? How do we have good white space? How do we have good paragraphs, right? How do we bold certain phrases or make header phrases so that people's attention can be kept on the page? That all has to do with that professional look, and that helps us in the search engines, because when they come there, if they stay longer, they consume the content, they read it, right? That sends a signal back saying, hey, thank you, that was a good result. You should return that same result to the next person. Things like video or custom Google Maps, and we saw those in Barbara's post, right? We want to have those things on there because they keep people on our page longer, right? They deliver more kind of well-rounded, rich content or rich information. Carrie will send you guys a link right now about how you can create custom Google Maps. Don't worry about that. This is kind of a last step, right? Getting that extra stuff in there, those extra things that'll keep them on the page. Right now, we really want to focus on those 4 fundamentals: 200 to 500 words, keyword phrase for the title, repeat that keyword phrase at the start and the end of the post, use that keyword phrase 3 to 5 times in the body, right? Then we want to make sure that our images, that they have a proper image description and title. We want to make sure that we have a link. We want to make sure that we have, a nice layout, and that we're maybe using some additional kind of media-rich content. Now what? Well, get a blog. Look, the stuff we talked about today, this is really applicable to ActiveRain, and I showed you it on ActiveRain. You can do these same kinds of things if you have a WordPress blog or a Blogger blog. Okay, there's a couple of extra steps out there. But on ActiveRain, if you're a Rainmaker, if you're not a Rainmaker, there'll be a pretty sweet deal, I think, coming out for you guys in an email here later today. But on ActiveRain, if you're a Rainmaker, right, we got our blog. Then you're going to create a list of 10 long-tail keyword phrases, and there's some homework. Oops, I'm not supposed to call it homework. Carrie wants me to call it action items. There's some action items that actually got sent to you guys this morning, right? It's homework. Do it. You just spent an hour with me. Now's the time to take that information that you just learned and put it into practice. So I think the homework might only have you create 5 long-tail keyword phrases, but essentially create 10 things you could write about, right? And that might be 5 subdivisions and 5 condo complexes in your market. Then we're going to have you write 1 piece of content using what you learned. And again, this is all in your homework. This isn't in your homework, I don't think, but learn if your website is equipped to generate leads, and that's really going to relate to our 3rd class. I hope next week you'll come back for keywords, because we're going to dive into keywords really deep and really get a good understanding, because there's probably a few of you out there going, well, we don't really have, I'm in a rural area, we don't have condos and subdivisions, like what should I be writing about? We'll really dive into that next week, but it's that concept of getting more specific with your subject matter if you want to be less specific geographically. So you want to talk about your city, but you might want to talk about properties for sale with a horse barn in Ellensburg. And then you're going to use this checklist each time you write a piece of content. And this checklist will be provided to you as a part of the homework. So you're going to have to go check the homework out. Again, it's in your email. But this checklist will be in that homework, right? And these are just the things that we talked about. But you want to make sure if you're going to write a piece of content, you might as well do it the correct way. So we're going to kind of check off each of these things. Did I get these things in here? There's a couple I didn't really talk about, like share your content on social media or include H1 and H2 header tags. Carrie will give you the link of how you can create H1 and H2 header tags. Just another signal that we send to the search engines. Okay? Sharing your content on social media, we make it pretty easy for you on an ActiveRain blog post right up here at the top to share your content. The most important place I would be sharing my content would be on Google+. Why? Because it's owned by Google. Why else? Because Google is starting to look at social signals to impact how they return results. So sharing your content on Google+, even if you're not connected to a bunch of people there, is still important. Right? And then you can share on LinkedIn, Facebook, those different places. Again, as we looked at that pyramid at the very beginning, that's kind of the least important component of this at this point. But we still want to do it. Oops. You know what? That's not the right promo. You guys have the promo. You could maybe use this promo. You guys have the promo in your email. I'll actually check with Michelle. She might be telling me right now, no, what are you doing? There's a promo somewhere. I think it's in an email to you guys if you're not a Rainmaker already, where you can take advantage of that.